Welcome to Man in America, a voice of reason in a world gone mad. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. One of the themes to this show, Man in America, and it's not just this show, it's really how I live my life, is I'm trying to uncover and expose the hidden hands that are controlling and manipulating our society. While I was born into what I thought was a free world with freedom of choice and everything is there for the taking. You just have to look for it and search for it. I soon discovered as I got older that we live in a world that is carefully constructed around us. You could call it a prison. Some refer to the earth as a prison planet. And that's really what I've come to in a lot of my own research is that, yes, there are hidden hands controlling almost everything around us. We're surrounded by lies and deception and buried history, and also, we've been fed false stories of who we are as people, the history of mankind. There's so much more beyond that. But part of my own journey is trying to uncover what are these mechanisms used to control us? What are the psychological things? What are the tools that they've been used to enslave mankind? And how can we undo those tools? How can we get back to a place where we have true freedom? And so I've focused a lot on topics like the medical industrial complex, the military industrial complex, the propaganda industrial complex, the big tech, and a lot of these tools that have been used to enslave us. But I think that one of the greatest tools ever used to enslave mankind has been money. And this goes back to the dawn of time, right? What is the one time when Christ was angry as he was flipping over the money changer tables? There's a lesson there for us is why was he angry? Well, because those coins that they were using, that currency throughout the ages has been used as a weapon against us. It's been used to enslave us. And that's why I cover economics a lot on this show. It's not because I like economics. It was probably the one of my least favorite interests growing up. But when I've understood and read things like, Creature from Jekyll Island and understand the concepts behind this, I think it's really important that we understand the role of economics in our own slave system and how to get out of that. But what you also see is patterns. And this is another thing that I am very interested in. I'd rather talk about the fourth turning than talk about the latest news today. Because if you look at patterns, you can see that there's nothing new under the sun. You can see that a lot of the mechanisms that are surrounding us and the mechanisms used to control the population or to collapse a country or whatever it is, that these are the same playbooks that they've used before. And if you look for the patterns, if you look for the steps of the playbook, you can see what's coming. And when I look at what's happening right now with the economy here in the United States, and this is what we're getting into today, because we just had the Federal Reserve meeting with Powell, which I'll dig into a little bit. The Federal Reserve just cut interest rates for the first time in 2025, took it down 25 basis points. Here you go. Epoch Times reported the Federal Reserve cut interest rates for the first time this year following its two-day policy meeting that concluded on September 17th. The members of the Federal Open Market Committee voted to reduce the benchmark federal funds rate by 25 basis points, setting the new target range at 4% to 4.25%. Okay. So it says the federal funds rate is the central benchmark that influences borrowing costs across the U.S. economy, affecting everything from business loans to household mortgages, which we're going to talk about today. So what I want to show you today is just a bunch of charts and research, a lot of other people's brilliant research that I'm writing on the back of, that's painting a picture of what I think is the Great Reset in the financial terms. And this is something that affects all of us because a record high number of families have their assets sitting in the stock market. I'll show you the charts for that. But if you look at the patterns, you look at the charts, it paints a very scary picture. And I know it's been overquoted so many times that the Klaus Schwab, you'll own nothing and be happy. But if you look at what I'm going to show you today, I'd say that what I'm seeing is the recipe to make it so that we own nothing, right? That's it. And this, again, back to, I've done an interview with David Jensen recently, which I'll have him on again, I think sometime this week, hopefully. And we talked about this is what they do. They take us, the people, they convince us to put all of our assets into these fake things, currencies, stocks, etc. They inflate those assets. We think we're getting richer and richer and richer. Then they collapse those assets and they come in with the real money and buy everything up for pennies on the dollar. Look what happened in 2008. Look at how many homes were bought up by the big banks, right? It wasn't some random thing. It was a playbook they're following. And so today I'm going to do my best just to walk you through the indicators. I see that playbook is being absolutely used right now, and that there are some frightening indicators for what's coming next. So I'm going to dig into that. I want to first, so obviously, they lowered the rates to by 25 basis points. But I want to first take a look at the overall state of where we're at in America, because we're being told, even from the current administration, that hey, the economy is doing great, we're better than ever, but that's not the reality that a lot of the data shows. Okay, so here is a post from Andrew Lokanoth. Sorry, Andrew, if I mispronounced your name. It says, this is the definition of broken. The U.S. housing market has reached its most unaffordable level in history. Gen Z and millennials are delaying traditional milestones like marriage, homeownership, and parenthood due to high housing costs and stagnant wages. This is insane. So here you have, this is the U.S. home price history from 1890 to 2025. You can see that's not a good thing when you see at the top of that chart there where it's turning red, the 2025 bubble, right? And this is the case. And I have a lot of other data to show you here that, yes, that homes are becoming more and more unaffordable. And this is the real point, though, is that Gen Z and millennials are delaying traditional milestones like marriage, homeownership, and parenthood due to high housing costs and stagnant wages. This is serious because it's not just about owning a home. A home is what is, for a lot of people, a home is part of raising family. It's a part of raising kids, right? I own my home. Well, I guess the bank owns my home and I'm paying them off on a slave mortgage, unfortunately. But, technically, I guess you could say I am a homeowner, and this is where I'm raising my children. And I hope that I hold on to this home at least until I get them through, until they're on to their next stage of life, beyond living under my roof. But this is absolutely, absolutely important. Let's go to the next little bit of information here. Now, this is actually from mid last year, from the Kobesi letter. But this is also important because I imagine that this data has even gone more crazy, right? Say it's now more affordable to rent than own a home in the U.S. It says homeowners are now spending 35% of household income on housing costs, including mortgage, taxes, and insurance. On the other hand, renters spend 29% of their income on rent on average, according to Zillow. So in Q1 2024, homeowner expenses on the medium-priced houses accounted for 32% of the national average wage. This is near record levels seen in the 2008 financial crisis. In general, it's now cheaper to rent an apartment than to own a typical home in all but one of 35 major metros in the United States. Owning a home is a luxury. And here you can see a chart here, which I imagine that it's even gotten worse since then. So what does this mean, right? You say you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. Well, what they've done is that they've made it so that now the average American is, actually, I don't know the exact stats, but it's cheaper to rent than own a home. But we also know that, again, since 2008 and a lot of the crony rules and new regulations that were put in after that, that we've seen a massive amount of private equity and private firms coming in and buying up all these single family homes, making them more expensive, but also making it so that we can't have them, which is what we're seeing, not just in the homes, we're seeing that in businesses and so many other parts of our lives, that there's this massive consolidation happening, that the assets that the average American, say 50, 80 years ago, would own, that became a benchmark of them saving and building up an asset. And that's what it used to be, right? So if you owned a home in the 1950s and say you bought it, you pay it off, you slowly accumulate an asset. As you're paying off your home, it becomes valuable. The price goes up. And then when you're ready to retire, you can sell that house. You can pass it on to your children. It gives you this upward mobility. It gives you a way to save. But if you're renting every month, if it's cheaper to rent, what if you rent a house for 20 years? After 20 years, you've got nothing to show for it. You have no equity in a home to show for it, which is just, it's catastrophic what's happening here. But even on the rentals, you look here, it says late rental payments are skyrocketing. So this is showing the late rent payments since January 2021 to 2025. And you can see, again, even under the current administration, in which we were promised a golden age, it doesn't look very golden to me if you're seeing a massive spike in people that are unable to even pay their rent. So these are indicators. These are patterns that we're seeing that something is not right with our economy. And we'll get into some of the bigger aspects of that. Here's another indicator. It says Google searches for help with mortgage has now surpassed the peak of the 2008 global financial crisis. Now, this is just one data point. You could say that, this is showing interest over time. Okay, so it has, Google has a way of kind of assigning numbers, and obviously they have a way of calculating what is the interest over time. You can see right around the housing crisis of 2008, which is what peak was before, right there, that help with mortgage was skyrocketing. Now, some people have said, well, what if people want help with getting a new mortgage? Maybe that's so, but I think that as the economy starts tanking, that you're seeing more people asking, okay, I need help with my mortgage, right? I'm struggling to pay it. And if you look at the same chart showing that late payments are also skyrocketing, and you look at this, this is a concerning fact that we're now past the peak in terms of how Google kind of quantifies this of people searching for help with mortgage. It's another it's another indicator. Here's another post. This is by Finance a Lot, which a great account. I enjoy a lot of what he puts out. He says, you're right, we aren't in 2008. It's worse. And this is also what I'm seeing too. I'm seeing a lot of different comparisons of people saying that what we're seeing, the data is showing that we're in a situation right now with the overall economy, with the markets, where it's worse than 2008, it's worse than 2000, and it's showing a lot of indicators of being similar to what happened back in the late 20s when we entered into the Great Depression. Okay, so if you look at this, and again, this is just another data point, make what you want of it. New homes for sale in the U.S. South region by the thousands. So August 2006, you can see, if you follow the numbers, they oftentimes tell you, this is why Martin Armstrong's been so successful with his Socrates and his predictions, because he's looking at the numbers and the data, and numbers aren't just numbers. They're not just arbitrary. They're patterns, they're trends. They show us things. There's cycles. And so you can see leading up to the housing collapse in 2008 that you had a bunch of homes coming on the market. And if you then look forward to where we are right now, 2025, it's a similar trend. Not good. 2008 wiped a lot of people out in this country. So if we continue looking at the banking sector, again, more concerning information. You say, why am I showing you this? Well, I want you to see what's really going on, because if you turn on CNBC, you turn on Fox News, they're going to just kind of keep telling you, hey, we're doing great. We're doing great. Hey, look at that Magnificent Seven. Look at NVIDIA is up. Make sure you're putting your money into your 401k. Make sure you're putting your money into the stock market. That's what they're doing. But the reality is that when those markets, when the crash happens, the common people that took the advice of the Jim Cramers or their local TD advisor, their Vanguard portfolio advisor, the people that took the advice of them because they didn't know themselves, like, oh, I'm just going to trust the experts. Well, look what happened during COVID when we trusted the experts. But the problem is that now I think a lot of people say, hey, just because you're a doctor with a clipboard and a white suit, it doesn't mean I should just absolutely trust you. You're not God, right? I no longer just trust the science blindly, but a lot of people just still trust the financial system blindly. They just trust the banker. They trust the financial advisor. It's like, well, do you think that if the same corrupt elite banking families and kind of the tentacles of that deep state, if they're controlling the hospital system, if they're controlling the doctors, the advisors of your health, don't you think they might also be controlling the sector that they control the most, which is the banking sector? Maybe that they're controlling and kind of feeding things to the financial advisors. The financial advisors, they're not going to you and saying, hey, you know what, Mr. Smith, I highly recommend you put most of your money into gold and silver right now because the dollar is losing its value. And then they're not telling you that. They're saying, well, if we move your money over here, you can make, a 9% return in this stock and this. And they're just they're feeding you into the system. They're feeding you into the beast system. And again, this is why I think, why I cover money and the economy, because I think that it is the ruling system. As much as you look at the big tech and military industrial complex and the big pharma, you look at all those systems that are used as tools to control and engineer the population, I'd say the money is the most powerful one, right? Didn't you hear somewhere as well, is that the love of money is the root of all evil? Haven't we been warned over and over again about this? So here you go. Yeah, I bet your financial advisor is not going to tell you about this. Ladies and gentlemen, our world is being poisoned. Every day we're exposed to more chemicals sprayed into our skies, leaching into our food, and polluting our air and water. From pesticides and heavy metals to hormone disruptors and to synthetic additives, these toxins are bombarding our bodies and silently destroying our health. But there's something you can do to fight back, and it starts in your gut. Kimchi One from Brightcore Nutrition contains over 900 strains of beneficial probiotics that will help flush toxins, restore gut balance, and support your immune system. Because when your gut is strong, your body can resist. You'll feel the difference. Better digestion, more energy, clearer thinking, stronger immunity, and even improvements in your skin, hair, and metabolism. And this isn't just hype. Studies show that fermented foods like kimchi can reduce the risk of obesity, improve blood sugar, and support whole body wellness. Kimchi One is all natural, non-GMO, dairy-free, gluten-free, and 100% made in the USA by a company that actually cares about your health. And today, you can get an exclusive offer just for my viewers, 25% off with your code MANINAmerica by clicking the link below. Or call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. So give them a call now at 888-575-6488, and their educated staff will make sure that Kimchi One is right for you. Again, that's 888-575-6488. All the links and information are in the description below. Breaking. Unrealized losses on investment securities for U.S. banks reached $395.3 billion in Q2 2025. This is 6 times higher than at the peak of the 2008 financial crisis. This also marks the 13th consecutive quarter of losses as interest rates remained elevated. Meanwhile, the number of banks on the FDIC problem bank list reached 59 in Q2 2025, or 1.3 of the aggregate. Unrealized losses at banks continue to pose a significant risk. If you look at this, again, since 2022, of the unrealized gains and losses on investment securities, that's not a good thing, right? All those bars going down, that's not a good number. That's not really positive, right? As they say here, it poses a significant risk. But what's interesting though is, and I've got a really interesting video to show you, a short, 2-minute video or so, where a guy starts explaining the difference between the middle class and the upper 10% in terms of how it drives the economy. And then we'll also get into the stock market and how it relates there too, because this is really, really important to understand that for these elites, it's do as I say, not as I do. And you look at them and they're not doing what they're telling us to do. They're telling all of us to, hey, run into these places again, like the Magnificent Seven, and hey, put your money here. That's not what they're doing. If you look at what they're doing, the banking families, what's happening, sovereign banks, they're pulling out of the stock markets, right? Berkshire Hathaway, I think, has one of its largest cash positions ever. Jamie Dimon's been dumping millions and millions of dollars worth of stock. And you're seeing the same pattern over and over again. They're leaving the stock market. They are exiting the stock market. They see what's coming. They see the writing on the wall. And then you also look at a lot of sovereign banks. And again, in a lot of these family offices, they're moving their money into hard assets, whether it's land, precious metals. They're not keeping their money in the stock market. They smell something is going on. There's writing on the wall they see that they're not telling us about, because if they tell us about it, we're all going to panic. And that's just going to cause everything to move so much quicker. And what happens is then it closes their window of opportunity to get out of this stuff. It's like, if you know the house is going to burn and the house is full of 500 people, and you're in the middle of the house, if you yell, hey, the house is going to burn, everyone runs out at once, you may not make it. But if you quietly slip out the back door and don't tell anybody about it, you're off in the woods before the house starts burning and you're safe. So that's exactly what they're doing. So I'll play this quick video. Also, just a quick reminder before I forget it, I've got a Substack that I highly recommend you go check out, right? So I cover some of the finance stuff. Most shows that I do, I actually take and also do an article that summarizes the show. You can watch a show on there, but I'm also now starting to publish more content and commentaries as well. Actually, let me pull it up for you really quick. So I highly recommend, I'll put the link in the description. There we go. Let me pull up the website for you. It's just maninamerica.substack.com. So check it out, right? Up over here, I just published a really good, important article, I think, on the assassination. But anyway, highly recommend you check it out. Just maninamerica.substack.com. It's another way to kind of engage in the content that I'm putting out there. And a lot of the original thought and more, long form written content I'm putting out on here instead of, Twitter and other places. So you're going to find things on here that you're not going to find elsewhere. And I'll make sure that the link is in the description as well. Okay. So getting back to this, this video here, let me find this video that I was going to play for you. Let's see here. Now, wait, where did it go? Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to play this video for you. It's kind of funny. It says, this dude is goofy, but what he's saying is spot on. 49% of consumer spending is coming from the top 10% wealthiest households. The middle class just doesn't matter as much anymore. The wealthy are much less reliant on them. So you become expendable. So actually, it's only a minute 12. So check this out. I'll play it for you.
Today we got more confirmation that the only reason the economy is in good shape is because the rich are spending money. Consumers in the top 10% of income distribution accounted for 49% of all spending in the second quarter, which is the highest level with data going back to 1989. So basically, if you make less than 190 grand a year, you have the exact same spending with regard to inflation as you did in 2020. It's barely kept in line, whereas everybody else making 200K and above is up there. I'd like to remind everyone that 90% of the stock market is owned by 10% of the population. So the reason the stock market is up is because the wealthy own most of the stocks. The wealthy are doing most of the spending. And in a funny way, they're generating most of the value themselves. But if any of them get skittish, then the real problems will start. Because for everybody else, we've been in a recession since 2020. For anybody not making money out the ass, it's been all about just buying what you can afford, watching necessities skyrocket in price and having no say in it. It also explains why retail spending came in higher than expected this month. It's because it's being propped up by rich people continuing to spend money on bullshit. In addition to AI CapEx powering the economy, we have this too. The moment these people feel skittish, though, the stock market will come crumbling down with the rest of the data.
So, I mean, he says it pretty succinctly, right? That when they say the economy is booming and everything, and that's what happens. You look around, it's like, I don't feel like that. Like, people are struggling. If the economy is doing so well, why are, people not paying their rent skyrocketing? No one's buying the house anymore. No one can afford to live anymore. And he actually puts it in the data shows it's because the wealthy, because and this is what happens, right? When there is turmoil like this, when everything gets upside down, the people, it's the upper class that they gain during that. That's the thing, is that the really wealthy, they love when we're in a recession. They love when there is a crash because they see it coming and they're positioned to make even more money amidst the crash. That's what they're doing. But they don't want us to know that because how do they make their money is that when that crash happens, we're all stuck in it. We all lose everything we've got. We're forced to sell it for pennies on the dollar. They scoop it up. If you want to lessen this, go watch It's a Wonderful Life. It's one of the best documentaries on how the banking system works. Is that the bank systems collapse, people lose, they lose confidence in it, their money gets taken away, they lose everything, and the rich guy comes in and buys up the town. It's a pretty good I'd call it a documentary on the financial system. But continuing though, okay, this is what's also crazy, is, I told you, it's like, oh yeah, your Vanguard advisor is just saying, hey, put more money into stocks, put more money into stocks. Well, look at this. This is wild. So it says U.S. household allocation to stocks hit a record 45% in Q2 2025. This share has skyrocketed over the last 3 years. By comparison, allocation was at 38% at the 2000 dot-com bubble peak. Americans have never held more equities relative to their financial assets. So what this is showing is that household assets, now 45% of household assets are being poured into the stock market. This is insane. And to me, this is exactly what we're highlighting here, is that they know what's coming and they're convincing everybody, hey, get in the stock market, because they know that when it crashes, those people that have 45% allocation into the equities, that's a massive loss. You look at the dot-com bubble, it was at 38%. So this is also another frightening chart that goes into the overall pattern that we're at like nearly half, right? That the average U.S. household allocation into equities is nearly half of the assets, which is frightening. It's frightening to me. It's like, okay, it's one thing. Look, say you own some mining stocks or some junior mining stocks or something like that. Okay, yeah, to me, it's like that's that's worth kind of taking a little bit of a risk on. There's opportunity there. But we're not talking about this. This is something where people are just putting their money into their 401k and their IRA, and they're just moving it into the stock market. Wow, look how much NVIDIA's up. Look how much NVIDIA's up. It is so scary to me, all the indicators that show how weak this market is, how weak it is. But continuing, and this right here, if there's one chart that you screenshot from this video, it's this chart right here. It says the U.S. stock market hits its most expensive valuation in history, surpassing the dot-com bubble and the run-up to the Great Depression. So what this chart represents here is it is a combination, the value, basically the total valuation of the stock market compared to the GDP. So the ratio, it says the trailing P&E, forward P&E, cap, PB, PS, blah, 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 et cetera, combined to the GDP, showing the value of the stock market relative to the GDP. And this is something, again, that this shows you where the problem is, because what happens when again, 45% of the equities are just dumped of the average household, almost nearly half of households have their equity, there's the majority of their equity into the stock market. This is what happens. Look how overvalued the market is. But here's the key, though. It doesn't matter if you take a snapshot, and if I said, right now that that it's a 1-to-1 match, that the amount of money in the stock market is equivalent to the GDP, you might say, okay, well that's interesting, right? Yeah, stocks are doing great. But here's the key, though. The key is that, well, let's look back in history and what happens whenever we reach that same ratio. And here you go. Look at this chart. This is a cycles chart. This is showing you patterns. So here we are right now, as of August 25th. There we were in 1999, just before a massive crash. There we were in 1965, just before a massive crash. And there we were in 1929, right before a catastrophic crash. Again, if there's one thing you screenshot in this video, pay attention to this. Because if you look at this, if you look at this chart and you can see how this plays out and you still think, you know what, I'm just going to trust my Vanguard advisor. He says, don't worry about it. It's the same thing as the doctor saying, here, take this medicine. Don't worry about the side effects. Don't worry what you saw on the internet, those conspiracy theorists. You're going to be fine. It's safe and effective. It's no different. It's them lying to us, convincing us to put trust in their institutions when these institutions have one fundamental goal: to make us poor and sick and dead and make the elites wealthy and powerful in our absence. So if you look at this, this is not a good thing. Not to mention, continuing, the US dollar has now lost 10% of its value this year. This right here is the dollar index. Since the beginning of the year, on the bottom, if you can see it, January to September, it's lost 10% of its value. 10%. It's like if you had $100,000 in your bank account, it's now $90,000 in terms of its purchasing power. He says, meanwhile, the dollar has also lost 50% of its value versus gold in the past 3 years. And the purchasing power of the dollar since 1950 was $1 for $1. 75, it was 55 cents. 2000, it was 14 cents. 2025, it's 0.07 cents. And again, this is the other big lie they're using to steal our wealth from us, is by purposefully inflating the dollar, devaluing the dollar through inflation. They keep printing. What happens to a commodity? Let's just say that oil is at $100 a barrel, and all of a sudden you discover a 10 billion barrel deposit in Alaska, and now there's twice the amount of oil on Earth. Is oil still $100 a barrel? No, it should be $50 a barrel. It's supply and demand. So what happens when they keep printing the dollar? They keep printing it. This is what happens. It's also why we're seeing gold spike, because gold is the canary in the coal mine. Again, check out my previous interview with David Jensen. We go over this extensively. This is why they put all the mechanisms in place to suppress the value of gold, because gold is a direct reflection of this. Everyone, you look at gold, right? So here's gold. Great. Wow. Gold in 1 year, gold is up 44% in 1 year. Okay. Let's see. Look, what's gold up in 2 years? In gold in 2 years is up 90% in 2 years, right? In 2023, gold was down at $1,800. It's up 90% since then. Let's look at 5 years. Gold is up, again, 90% in 5 years. But remember, that's actually a lot of the gold that I ended up buying was at $1,700 an ounce. It was great. At that time, it was expensive because gold was like $1,700 to $2,000. It was hovering there for quite some time. But what this shows you, okay, what this shows you is that the dollar is losing its value, and that's why gold is going up, because gold is a real asset. So it's like you have your wealth. Okay, do you want to store your wealth in a dollar, or do you want to store your wealth in a piece of gold? Dollars are losing value. Gold is going up. This is what's happening. Look at another indicator here. This is actually a great tweet from the great Martis, who says gold. He's comparing 2008 to 2025, which I'll get into that chart, but he says gold rises not from hype, but as a warning of an impending crisis. This is such an important sentence. If there's one takeaway, gold rises not from hype, but as a warning of an impending crisis. What is this showing you? It's not from hype. It's a warning of an impending crisis. He pulls together these two charts here showing gold price in 2025, gold price in 2008. Now, if you know how to read charts, you can see, but what you can see is there's a similar pattern there. It's like, it's like the same kind of rise up, and then it's going to get, kind of gets trapped. It stays a little bit in the same area for a little while. Then it breaks away, it goes up, then it crashes. And what you see, though, interestingly, is that it doesn't crash to zero. No. Right? So in 2008, gold, maybe it got hit, came down, say 20%, hit 25%, bounced around, then came back up. Came back even higher than before. That's what happens. So I'll warn you, if the stock market crashes and you see the price of silver and gold come down 25, 30%, do not sell. Buy. If you have the money, buy, because it's going to be coming straight back up. Again, I'll give you a quick warning. I'm not a financial advisor, so do your own research. This is my research that I'm sharing with you. Now, there's below this, someone else shared something, which I thought was interesting. Here you go. It says, it's the crisis of ages. A full fiat currency collapse. Gold will rise rapidly into a hyperinflationary catastrophe. This person's price targets, $5,000 an ounce by June 2026, $7,500 by February 2027, $10,000 by May 2027. And then it's just going to continue going because it's a reflection of the dollar. And this thing is, like, I've been talking about the dollar collapse for a long time, for probably 3 or 4 years, maybe almost 5 years now. So people say, oh, well, it hasn't collapsed yet. You're just kind of throwing out conspiracies. You're a gold bug. Folks, the indicators are all there. It's all right in front of us. No one knows the exact timing of these things, but you can see the patterns. You can see what's happening. And this is what I fear. I'm not a person, I'm not fearful of this, actually, because my money is not sitting in the stock market. I own a little mining stock. Everything else, if I have extra money, it's putting into land, food, or precious metals. So I'm not scared of these things coming because I've prepared. But if I was someone that was sitting with 75% of my overall wealth sitting in the stock market or in bonds or in an IRA or 401k, I would be concerned personally. Like I told my mom, my mom, she's smart. She listened to me. I remember a couple of years ago, I said, Mom, if I can give you one bit of advice, pull your money out of your 401k and put it into silver. And she listened to me. I think she took almost half of her 401k out and she moved it over into silver. And now she bought a bunch of silver at $22 an ounce. It's now double that. Whereas her 401k, maybe it would have increased 5% since then, if she's lucky, maybe a little bit more. But the key, though, is that she's safe, because if at that time, say, a year ago, say there would have been a stock crash, market kind of tanks, a massive correction, her 401k would have got smashed. But she's sitting in a safe asset. And if you look at it, I think this is why, and again, we've seen this exact same trend. Here you go. China is buying gold at record levels, up to 10 times the official report as the West piles on debt. Who's really hedging risk? And this is such an important point. If you look at what the bankers are doing, look at what the central bankers are doing, look at what the wealthy family offices are doing through the COMEX, the elites, whatever you want to call them, they are moving their assets out of the markets and they're putting them in to gold and silver. The sovereign banks, the central banks, they are buying gold and silver at record levels. Why? Because they know the dollar is dying. It's a fiat currency. All fiat currencies have a life cycle. Gold is not a fiat currency. It's had value since the beginning of time, or I guess since it was first kind of used, over 5,000 years ago. It's never lost its value. Silver, even more so. I think silver is way undervalued. Actually, my personal advice is if you're buying either gold or silver right now, put your money into silver. You look at the ratio between gold and silver price, it's at historic lows. I think that, say gold could double in price, silver could quadruple in price. That's my opinion. But that's why for me, it's mostly silver, But this is it. They're saying, do as I say, not as I do. They're buying gold and silver. Because why? Because that's the lifeboat. That's the insurance policy. It's not about a speculation. Like you don't, I keep this 10-ounce bar of silver on my desk as a reminder. This right here is insurance. Okay? This never goes to zero in its value. My Coinbase wallet, I think I've got like $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. I bought it a while ago for an online transaction. Anyway, that could go to zero, right? This doesn't. Not to mention silver has all kinds of industrial uses, especially if you are entering into a war period. The amount of silver needed to make munitions and missiles, and not to mention AI and technology and everything. I expect to see silver go significantly higher than it is. Significantly. But this is, that's why I look at it. So again, this is just my own personal advice, as if I was talking to my own mom or my grandfather and they said, Seth, you're studying a lot of those geopolitics things. What do you think? I would say, get out of the markets, at least as much as you can, and put your money into things that have real value. Food, ammunition, tools, land, real assets. That's the key, is you need to have real assets. And to me, what's center to that? Gold and silver. It's a real asset. Because what happens is when the dollar keeps inflating and inflating and inflating, what it means is like, you think, it's inflating, it's gaining. No, it's being devalued, it's losing its value. But what you see is that they've kept it tied together, right? Through the LBMA and these other crony mechanisms, they've suppressed the price of gold and silver to keep it so that the dollar and the gold, or gold prices and silver prices, are staying pretty close together. But what's happening now is that those mechanisms are breaking, and you're seeing that this is starting to happen. You're seeing the dollars going down as precious metals are going up. And so it's not only about taking your money and putting it into an asset that will gain value, but you're also pulling it out of an asset that's going to be losing value. Not to mention, stock market, you say, well, my returns in the stock market have been great. They've gone up 10% in the past year or whatever that is. That's also good until it's not, right? Because the stock markets can crash. It can be a bubble. The housing market can collapse. So this is my own perspective on what's happening. I'm all about escaping the mechanisms that are being used to control us. That's why I live in the country. I try to be off grid as much as I can. We've got chickens, we've got gardens, guns to protect them, community, the neighbors around us. Because I don't think that we're entering into 10 years of just the golden age. I don't think that we're entering into this peaceful, nice period of time where everything's gonna be, hunky dory. Maybe, in December this year, I thought that, or sorry, December of last year, I thought, well, maybe once Trump gets back in, we're going to see these great changes. And, there's been some good changes, but honestly, I don't see much changing. I see that the chaos is increasing. The funny stuff happening with the banking system is only increasing. And so to me, my advice is get yourself out of the system. So if you want to buy gold and silver, if you know someone, great. Like I used to work in the jewelry industry. I can tell you there's a lot of frauds and cheats there. So you just be careful. I wouldn't recommend buying from pawn shops unless you know the pawn shop owner really, really well. It's so easy because I used to I wasn't a pawn shop, but I bought a lot of over-the-counter stuff. I'd have people bringing in gold bars and gold necklaces, and a lot of it was fake. Now, I knew how to test it. If I couldn't test it with my own equipment, I had friends that had, really expensive testing equipment. There's a lot of fake stuff out there. They fill these, that they put, kind of metals that have the same weight and density as gold inside of a gold coin, and they put gold on the outside. So if you look at the outside, actually it tests as gold. It's real gold, but it's real gold wrapped around something fake. So if you know someone that you can buy gold, great. If you don't know someone, my personal go-to is Noble Gold. If you go to goldwithseth.com, you can learn more about Noble Gold. Colin Plume, good friend of mine, he owns Noble Gold. You can buy directly from them. Like you can just say, hey, I'll send you a bank wire. I want to buy $100,000 in silver bars. They do that. But they're the best in the industry when it comes to IRA and 401k transfers, because there's ways that you can do the transfers that you don't get hit with all the taxes and penalties. So if you want to pull money, say out of the stock market, out of your 401k, out of your IRA, Noble Gold Investments. So it's goldwithseth.com, or you just call 877-646-5347. I'll make sure that information is also in the description below. But do your own research. That's the thing, is do your own research. My goal here is, I don't want to tell you what to think. I want to show you the research that I've done and the conclusions that I've come to. And I do believe that the whole talk of the Great Reset, all this stuff, it's not a joke. Like these aren't idle threats. This is real. The monetary system in our world is going to be reset. Everything is pointing towards it. Whether you go into BRICS, the de-dollarization, you look at what's happening with the dollar. We're at the end of a cycle. We're at the end of a fiat currency cycle. It can't continue. The world is losing faith in the dollar. The dollar is no longer what it was in the 80s as this powerful global reserve currency. Countries are running away from the dollar because they know what's coming. And so if we're still sitting with our wealth that we have worked so hard to accumulate, our blood and our sweat and our tears have gone into accumulating this wealth, if we're still sitting in a place that's vulnerable, that's losing money, that can be absolutely upset by the elites if they want to. The stock market, I look at the stock market as a complete sham. I think it's so controlled. I think it's about as controlled as our own media. Do you really think like the power brokers, the Larry Finks and the George Soroses and people even beyond them, do you think that they're just like watching the stock market and like, gee, I wonder what's going to happen today? No. They decide what's going to happen with the stock market. And they're doing this on purpose. It's at all times high. It's at all-time highs because they've allowed it to be so. And maybe they're waiting. Maybe they're waiting until at least 50% of Americans are just dumping their money into the stock market because they want us to be poor. Because if we're poor, we're easier to control. So they want that to happen. But we have to take our own measures to make sure that doesn't happen. So there we go. That's my show today. Hopefully it was helpful. Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like it, especially on Rumble. Hit that like button, or YouTube as well. Also, make sure you can share it too. Share it with friends and family. I hope it was a kind of a rational walkthrough of stuff that is easy to watch and listen to. I'm not some like economics guy. I'm just showing you the patterns that I see, and this is how I learn this stuff. And hopefully, it's easy for you to see those same patterns. And again, all the details, the links I mentioned are in the show description. So gold, my Substack. Make sure you follow my Substack. And I'll see you next time. I think tomorrow night I might be doing a live show tomorrow night. Probably go late with that one, but I'll let you know. Just make sure you follow me on social media, Twitter, Telegram, etc., and you'll get those updates. All right. Thank you. Take care, and God bless.